So obviously the reports of Christian leaders in the news is at alarming rate. Many caught in scandals rock the church and also rock the credibility of the church. Now, these issues involving the very thing the Bible is warning us against. Something to keep in mind is that, this problem affects both Christians in both organizations of the Catholics and the Protestants. So we have the umbrella of Christianity, and we have the Catholics and the Protestants, and we know it affects both groups. But in the past, we do know, because of records and court cases and news reports, as well as individual admissions and from the Catholic Church itself, that there has been some deep problems with priest and pedophilia. So we know that's an issue because it's already been established, but that's not something we're going to rehash here. I'm going to focus a little more on the other side, on the Protestant side, because there are some issues that have come about over the past few decades. It is alarming what's going on in the Protestant Church with spiritual leaders, and it's something that really needs to be discussed. So, let's start with some of the data. Some of the data that has been compiled, for this video, it actually is surprising. Pornography and pastors or spiritual leaders involved in pornography is at a rate of about 50%. So that's not only alarming, but it kind of shakes the ground of, wow, why are these people in the position they're in, if they can't control themselves in a moral fashion. Now that's not 50% of all pastors. It's up to 50% being involved with some form of pornography, and that's spiritual leaders. So that not only just covers pastors, but also spiritual leaders, and that's only those that have a lot of this data and research is those that have admitted to it. So it's alarming. Now, between 10 and 35% of those spiritual leaders, pastors, as well as others that fill a leadership role within the church, 10 to 35% being involved in extramarital affairs, with a lot of those affairs being with people from their own congregation, females that are in that particular leadership role that they oversee. So this is alarming, but also at the same time, I was kind of surprised at the data itself. This research data was actually from the 1980s, 90s, and 2000s. So covering 30 years ago, obviously it was getting worse percentage-wise as for spiritual leaders in failing. So it hasn't gotten better. So obviously this is an issue that needs to be discussed amongst the church leaders or church congregation. So I know this may be a very sensitive subject and a taboo to discuss, but just remember, I'm just a messenger. Please don't, get mad at me for, presenting this to you, presenting this data. I'm just, somebody that is coming to fellow Christians and saying, hey, this is a problem within the church that needs to be talked about, and it's a topic. So, a lot of times when it comes to issues like this of church leaders acting immorally, how does it come to this? Well, there are many of these cases involve being in a position of leadership and then taking advantage of people that are vulnerable. So, how does that happen? And this data it's the reason why it's alarming to me is that it's covering a 30-year period, and the span of 30 years, and it got worse through time. So, here today, it's probably not any better. And then with some of the reports that you see in the news and, what's unfolding in modern times when it comes to spiritual leaders, there's still a lot of scandals going on and spiritual leaders failing. Some of you may ask, why is it getting worse? For any good organization, it must have a good foundation. Because if that foundation is not solid, strong, or durable, eventually it's going to collapse. And that's kind of what we see happening today. We don't have a very good foundation and things are happening. How can this problem be fixed? I'm a doctoral researcher focused on organizational understandings. How do organizations work? So I study organizations as a researcher, and I understand some of the principles behind organizations, of having a good foundation. So what you have today is a fractured church and a business model that's actually causing more problems for the church. How many pastors are failing out there? Well, a lot of it you could relate to this model. If you put all the pressure on one person that you call pastor, all the responsibilities on him, that's a lot of pressure. And he's probably going to break. And that is one of the reasons why you have a lot of them, falling into sexual sins, infidelity, just quitting, altogether quitting. I'm sure that's, something you could look at as for statistics. How many people start out as pastors, because of a love for God and a heart for God, but then, just once they're in, there's so much pressure, they just give up. It's because they're following an unbiblical model.